Happy Tuesday, folks. It's Lisa Szabon-Smith with Ramble with Intent, and I am so excited to introduce you to Holly Schefold. If you haven't found her already, she is teaching kids, young people, teenagers, families, how to start cooking to properly nourish their bodies, to nourish their souls, and to be able to step forward into a high energy, high impact world that they are ready to lead within their own lives. But before we dive into the podcast, I want to bring to your attention a course that I will be launching in September, Communicate with Confidence, Entrepreneurs Leading the Way. I am calling in my lions, my lionesses, my business owners, my individuals who are ready to start having courageous conversations, but might not know how just yet. They might not know the tricks and the ways to get information flowing naturally without feeling like they need to impose an idea upon someone. It's an opportunity for us to learn how to have conversations that can diffuse tough situations, that can help other people see various viewpoints and be open to different perspectives. It's how we can start representing our sphere of influence, our communities, our businesses, and our intentions for the future through eloquence, through grace, through respect, and through the sole purpose of bringing people back together to be able to have discussions on how we can evolve together as a unified nation, as a unified industry, as individuals, as neighbors, as a community committed to the health and wealth and growth of each other. That's what we're here for. So keep an eye open for that course. It drops in September. Communicate with Confidence, Entrepreneurs Leading the Way. If you are in already, go to my website, szabon.com, and get on the wait list. I'm here for you. Let's build a stronger Canada through great communication, great conversations, and let's do this together. All right, on to the podcast with Holly.
I apologize in advance for the dog snoring. I hope it's that she's around.
It can't even hear it, so it's okay.
Okay, good.
Don't worry. It's all good.
She's a bulldog, so she's nasally.
Yep. Nope, it's all good. All right, yeah. Well, Holly Schefold, I'm so excited to have you here. You have a really interesting story because you were a Montessori trained teacher, and then you started to see the lack of real good quality food that is going into the bodies of the students you were teaching, but also really the environment in which you looked around and you saw kids aren't getting the proper nourishment. And probably falls on some of our shoulders as parents that the ease of the packaged food is there, and the kids, I mean, we have kids where they won't eat anything unless it comes out of a package. And that training of what a home cooked muffin is versus your packaged bear paws. And so you took it on yourself to start teaching people all that with your Nourish cooking company, correct?
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, first of all.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's kind of been a journey, like over the last 2-3 years, and then it really pivoted just in the last 6 months to like this, and I'll tell you what changed. But it started, I worked in, like you said, I was a Montessori teacher for years. I started teaching right out of teachers. I was 20 when I started teaching, like right out of teachers college. I loved the Montessori philosophy because it just built this independence in children and this critical thinking component and very hands-on learning. I loved how Montessori had studied child development so in depth. And so it was really like in tune with the needs. It is in tune with the needs of children and universally, like who a child is. And I love that. And I still love it. However, I'm not teaching any longer. I had actually left the classroom years before, actually right after I had my daughter. So 10 years ago, I left the classroom to go into admin. And I did admin for 8 years. So really like running the school with the owner, sort of being the front person when people would come in to inquire and have tours. I was the person that they would meet and enroll them and all of that. And then the pandemic hit and everything went like, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So before the pandemic hit, I had been teaching kids cooking classes like as an after school program at the school that I worked at. And I loved it, but I was just doing it like 2 days a week for an hour just to kind of like get kids excited about cooking. Didn't really think too much about what we were making. Was more focused on just accommodating all of the allergies that coming up, which is a whole nother topic, right? Why do we have so many allergies? And yeah, so when the pandemic hit, obviously the classes got shut down. And then over the next course of the year, I ended up losing my full-time job due to the mandates. So I was thinking, okay, like, what am I going to do now? And I took my love of cooking and my love for teaching children and combined them to create Nourish Cooking Company. So at the beginning, I was doing some cooking classes, but also cooking meals for families and delivering them. And I started a snack program, which was sort of like what started me on the path of packaged foods and all of what's going on with that industry.
Yeah.
Because you walk into a grocery store and you can, even the like the muffins, like you said, and the cookies and things like that that are baked in the grocery store and packaged are still full of garbage. Like we think we're getting a better product because it's baked in the store, but it's not. It's like it's just as bad as what's coming from the companies that are prepackaged. So I started my own snack program where families would sign up for a month at a time and I would deliver weekly a dozen homemade snacks to their doors. So muffins, granola, chia pudding, energy balls, all kinds of different things, just to kind of like start people realizing, that there's better options. You don't have time to bake at home, but like we can do this a better way.
Yeah.
But I quickly realized that cooking and baking myself, giving it to people is not sustainable.
I'm sorry. I can hear him now. He's having a good sleep.
It's just not sustainable. Like, yeah, if you want to scale it and grow it into a big business and, but now we're back into the packaged goods, which, so, so anyhow, I was like now leaning towards more of teaching children the skills to how to learn how to cook for themselves and what ingredients they're using and things like that, how to grow their food, where to find food that's local and fresh. But also really educating the parents, because this is the tricky edge of what I do, where the kids are my customer, but the parents are the ones with the credit card. And so if they don't understand the value, then they're not going to sign their kids up for it. So what pivoted for me was I actually went to the local children's hospital where I live in March, because my daughter's friend was having surgery. And I was just there to kind of support her while she was under and stuff like that. And so she said, well, let's go up to this waiting room and we can wait there. It's like an inpatient kitchenette, living room area, and there's food and stuff. So we go up there, and like the first thing I noticed was on the counter was cupcakes from the grocery store that had this like green frosting that was like this high, where like you go to wash it off the plates and it doesn't quite, like you can't get it off. And the green like stains your hands. And then on the wall it was like dispensers of sugar cereal. And that moment was like this pivotal, almost like a slap across the face. Like, oh my gosh. Like I hadn't been in a hospital for about 17 years and I knew hospital food wasn't great, but like airplane food didn't used to be great either. And it's come a long way. So I kind of just assumed that hospital food would have been the same. So when I walked in and that's what they were offering children who were sick and actually inpatient in the hospital trying to heal from something, I was like, oh wow, they really don't have our best interest at heart at all.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's so sad. And I can attest to the whole bakery thing. So I'm a grocery store kid. My parents had one of those in-store bakeries, and all of those items, all of them that you can buy are processed in a factory outside of the store, brought in frozen, and you could leave them on the counter for a day, 2 days. They'll still be fine. They don't go bad. And we never went beyond 2 days, but they are loaded with all of those preservatives as well. So no, it's not baked fresh. It's not the flour, the sugar, the water to create the bread. It's a whole lot more of other things inside of there.
Yes, yes. Even things like actually I'm gonna share a reel. I don't know if you remember Amanda Steele from
Hmm.
MYM,
Yeah.
but she shared this week about she went to buy whipping cream.
Oh
Just I
yeah.
think she was cream or something. And she's like, organic whipped cream, one ingredient, cream. And then she picked up like the major dairy brand around here and she held it up and she was like, she read out all of the ingredients. And it's like people, you don't even think, you just think, I'm just buying cream.
Yeah.
You don't realize it's full of these gums and these
Yeah.
monosaccharide, like diglyceride, like all of these things that are put in to maintain the shelf life
Yeah.
longer and prevent it from separating. And
Yeah.
like all of these things come at a cost to your
Yeah.
health. It's not what we were meant to be eating. And people, we've come so far away from food, you know?
We really
Uh,
have. Yeah.
yeah, I heard a quote that said 73% of what we buy or what you see in the grocery store is not food.
No.
It's packaged and processed,
Yeah.
and that makes sense because if you look at the fruits and vegetables section,
Yeah.
maybe 30% of the store, even like the milk and the cream, well, if you consider that they're adding things to it that's considered processed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Even your yogurts have like starches and corn syrups and everything else added into it as well. It's not real yogurt anymore.
yeah,
It's not that true culture. And unfortunately, our taste buds have been so programmed to prefer that manufactured flavor over what a real, natural, healthy, single ingredient flavor actually is.
yeah, and that's by design too, right?
Yeah.
You can get in the whole rabbit hole of the chemicals that they add to food to enhance
Mhm.
the flavor to make it physically addicting. It's why you can't eat
Yes.
just one potato chip, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just literally it makes you want to eat more and you can't stop. So,
Yeah. Yeah. The power of salt and sugar.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and there's a reason why there is an entire industry of food scientists, people who go to school to become food scientists, which is really, that is bolstering your entire fast food, frozen food, quick food industry, because it's those people who are finding to what degree do we need to cook flavor or condition the product so that then when we pull it out of the freezer and cook it, it's as if we just made a home cooked meal.
Yeah, and I've read recently that the people who are behind the food science are the same people who were the lobbyists for the tobacco industry back in the
Mm.
day. And so
Mhm.
all of the tactics that they used for the tobacco industry to get people addicted,
The same.
they're now flipping to the food industry with sugar, salt, and these chemical additives that are making people addicted to
Yeah.
food.
And that doesn't surprise me. I mean, we even run into an issue where we see kids, they on surface look like they eat relatively healthy, adults too, but it's the quality of the food that they're eating and the quantity to which they're eating because they are still unhealthy looking, obese individuals by what a true standard of obese actually is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like how now that you've seen, now that the veil had been lifted in that hospital, how are you marching forward to start getting that information out more and teaching other people? What are you doing in that process to advocate for finding healthy, whole, natural foods that people
Mm-hmm.
can learn to put into their bodies?
Yeah, it's funny because I tell people you can actually go into my Instagram profile and you can pinpoint the moment where the penny dropped because my content completely changed,
Mm.
to educating parents on, all of the different aspects of what's in our food. And I just, like, I think about working with children. I have a child in one of my cooking classes, and her eczema is so bad. And I
Oh,
want to say she's probably 7 or 8 years old. And I just look at her, and her mom's like, we've tried everything. We don't know what it is. But there's no looking for the root cause. And
mm-hmm.
that's a whole nother aspect of educating parents, is like, we've come to be a society where you just take it at face value. And what do I need to do to solve this problem right now? So my child has ADHD. We've tried this, it didn't work. So we're going to resort to putting them on meds.
Mm-hmm.
And that might work for some kids. They might need it. But a lot of the time, I feel like we miss the mark on, well, what are you feeding them?
Mm-hmm.
Or what are you putting into their body? What's their vaccination schedule been like? What were they like as an infant? Can you like connect the dots between any of these outside factors that might be contributing to why they have these physical issues?
Yeah.
There's so many behavioral issues, and that, I think, is partially food. um, I also think it's a lot of what they're seeing and the screen time that they're
Oh, yeah.
using,
Yeah.
because I taught for phones and tablets and computers, and then I taught after phones and tablets and computers, and the attention span is completely different now.
Yeah.
But again, I think that's also partially what we're putting into our food.
Yeah.
So yeah, so educating, and also, transitioning to, when I'm teaching kids in person, we're not using, you know, the ingredients that I would tell them to avoid. We're not using seed oils. We're trying to avoid any processed sugar, refined sugars, using Himalayan salts instead of table salt.
Mm-hmm.
All of these, like, little things that you can just teach them from a young age,
Yeah.
that, and I think it's information. And when you know better, you
You
do
do
better.
better.
Not
Absolutely.
everybody knows. Like, I mean, I was like, my kids still eat garbage from time to time. My boys are 19 and 17, so it's a hard switch to flip. And the only thing you can do at that point is just keep leading by example. And
Yeah.
my son went to the store yesterday to pick himself up something for lunch, and he came home with the Knorr sidekicks and fettuccine Alfredo. And I was like, do you know what I do?
I lived off of those when I was a kid.
I know, but please. But he knows, just like we know,
Yeah.
like, still eat
Yeah.
chips, even though we know. But at least if you have the education, you can be like, oh, I need to stop. I'm going to have a couple, and then I'm going to stop, because I know they're going to try to make me eat more.
Yeah.
Um, or just like, what kind of things can you make at home versus buy in the grocery store? Like, how easy it is to make homemade bread, or all of these things that we've just, like, I feel like it's almost been taken away from us, because we had a generation where they were sold the convenience, they were
Yeah.
sold the dinners and the formula, and so now we have a whole generation where we've lost the skills.
Yeah. There's a big gap.
There's a big gap. So that is my mission. And it's funny that you ask, like, what are you doing now? So I'm in Ontario right now, and I have this unshakable desire to live on a farm or live on land somewhere.
Yeah.
And so until I can get there, I've actually been volunteering at a local farm, an
Oh,
organic here. So, like, just learning more about
yeah.
food and where it grows and how to grow it, and you
Mhm.
know give back a little bit to the community, at the same time gaining knowledge for myself, so that when
Yeah.
I have my property one day, I'll be able to put that knowledge into play. And
That's
yeah, so
amazing. That's
that's
great.
where I'm now.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, even just to understand the art of gardening and figuring out the soils, why things aren't growing somewhere, why they don't grow beside each other, understanding all of that, really the science behind those plants too, just
Yeah,
amplifies your ability to be able to be like, the childlike excitement that, oh my goodness, my whole plate I made. Like I planted these seeds and now we're eating the cucumber and the lettuce and the tomato. And like my family hunts. So the meat is something that we have harvested ourselves. And being able to put your whole plate on something that you created yourself, the first time it's like this wild, joyful experience because you feel that you're taking back a piece of that sovereignty or independence that intrinsically you knew had always been taken away, but you should have been doing it anyways.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that's what the last 3 years kind of woke a lot of people up to. Oh,
Yeah.
gee, we buy way too much on the grocery store
Yeah.
for our, we don't even question it. We just go buy our meat and our milk and our eggs. And, the kids have no idea where this food actually comes from. So, little steps like just buying locally, like wherever you can, eggs, milk, butter, veggies, fruits, like whatever you can buy from a local farmer instead of the grocery store.
Yeah.
Not only are you supporting this local business, but also it's so much better for your health and
Yeah.
know where the food is coming from and that it hasn't been manipulated. Um,
Hmm.
I can go to the farm and I can talk to the farmer who's actually okay, bye. Dog doesn't see him in uniform now.
Ah,
Um, so you can speak to the farmer and you can know you like they'll tell you that I volunteer on the farm. I get to see the cows in the
yeah.
field while I'm picking the garlic scapes next to the next field over.
Yeah.
It's really cool to actually see these animals that are free range, and
Yeah.
it's really it's really interesting.
It is. And it's a cool experience. I remember as a kid, I have no idea where it was, but I remember as a kid going with my family to a U-Pick farm somewhere in Alberta. And it was just like families upon families upon families that are all in the rows of the vegetables and the fruits. And we're picking like everything. And it's someone put in the effort to grow it, but then we're putting in the effort to harvest it for them. But I mean, you saved money, you came home with food, you understood the effort required to be able to harvest that. But my childhood memory is it was like a fantasy land. I don't know, it felt so natural and so calm being surrounded by other families doing the same thing. And we're just out there gathering food for our next week, 2 weeks to eat.
Yeah, yeah, isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's funny how when you can bring yourself back to the land and have a connection on the entire process, not just the walk into the grocery store to purchase it, how much more appreciative you are of that food and how much more you slow down to take in and enjoy it as you're eating it. And really, I guess, in a sense, have a form of gratitude while you're going through that whole process too. So do you touch on that, being able to slow down while you're digesting your food and the gratitude components too?
Yeah, I'm actually, so I run my week classes, and in September, I'm going to flip the switch a little bit with the older kids.
Mhm.
And instead of just coming in and making one dish and we kind of all get to sample it, we're going to make a meal, and then we'll actually sit down and eat together, set the table, and all eat together. So instead of it being an hour class, it'll be like an hour and a half or an
Ah,
hour and 45 minutes, right? So just to kind of give them that full circle
yeah,
experience, like this is what it's like to set a table and sit down and like appreciate where the food came from. Like maybe I could take them to the farm and show them, we could go pick out the food.
yeah.
um,
Oh, I got
so
chills just thinking about that. Like just being able to have people come to the table to share a meal too. We don't see lots of that anymore. And that's so vital for human connection and really a little bit of that mental health and mental stability as well as being able to sit down at a table, dissect your day with your family, listen to other people and have conversations on, topics at hand, issues, questions, concerns, what's happening tomorrow, all of those things.
and so many families, they've gotten away from that, the family
Yeah.
meal. Oh, well, we've got this sport and and then it's like, well, then we need to question how many sports are your kids in or how many activities are they in, and is that benefiting them, or is that taking away from your family? I just posted something about that this morning, because I think a lot of times, I know my son was in rep hockey, that one that you just saw, Lee. And at the time it was fun, and he learned a lot of skills, and it was great. Like organized sport, I can't say enough great things about what they learned, but it did kind of cost. There were many nights where we had a toddler and him going to hockey, and we had to like divide and conquer because one of us had to stay home to put the little one to bed. And so yeah, you do kind of have to balance it and say, is this working for our life? I heard someone say that, I think it was kind of like, if you're at a place where you're feeling like you're in lack, how can you feel gratitude when you don't feel like you have anything? And it was such a great exercise that it's worth repeating. And it was, when you sit down for a meal, think back to where you purchased the vegetables, and then have gratitude for that person who showed up at the farm to be there to take your money, and then have gratitude for the farmer who employed that person, and then gratitude for the vision that farmer had to even create that farm in the first place and be able to sell to you. And like, you trace the trail back.
That's powerful.
And just giving gratitude along the way the whole time. You can even do it like going out to eat. Well, like the server that's there, that's serving you, and then the owner who's put it all together for you, and the chef that's cooking the meal in the kitchen. Like, it's so easy to have gratitude when you realize, how many steps, even for the grocery store, how many steps that food had to go through to be there, to purchase, to put on your plate. It's very powerful.
Absolutely. And I can't find the source, but I'm quite certain that there is a scientific study that proves that when you are eating and digesting from a state of gratitude or happiness, you process and burn those calories in a better form. And so that is one reason why, for most studies, when people go on holidays, they eat a significant higher amount of food, but they typically don't come back having gained weight, because they're in a state of gratitude and appreciation and relaxation that their body then can actually process and take in all the nourishment from the food, rather than just the vitally important stuff and casting the rest away to adipose fat and other aspects as well in terms of body composition.
Yes, 100%. I had a thought about that as you were talking, and now I've lost it, but it'll come back to me.
It will.
But it was about just having the gratitude for the food, and just also being mindful. I remember doing my nutrition training, and they were saying, if we only ate until we were 80% full, and ate slowly so that you could feel actually when you were 80% full, the majority of people would lose weight, because most of us are just overeating unconsciously, right? And like getting away from teaching parents, or for teaching parents how to do things differently, where like there's no more of this like you need to eat everything on your plate or else, no, teach your kids how to eat intuitively, so that they know. And my daughter will say now, I'm 80% full.
That's cute.
She's also heard me say, my dinner pouch is full, but my dessert pouch is empty.
My daughter does the same thing. She's like, I'm full, but there's room in the dessert stomach.
Yeah. And so that kind of came back to bite me, because I was like, I get it. Sometimes you do just feel like you want something sweet after dinner, but like, as long as over the course of a week, you feel like they're getting adequate nutrition, then you don't have to stress at each meal. And definitely, I feel the days of telling kids they need to eat everything on their plate. Or I remember my dad saying, if you don't eat that, I'm going to put it in the fridge and you're going to eat it for breakfast.
Oh, I had that mushroom soup for 3 days.
How horrible, right? Like, no wonder we all have like aversions and things like that, because, there's this whole teaching that food is good, this food is good, and that food is bad. And, if you were just offering good food all the time.
Yeah.
There is no good or bad. It's just, some things we don't eat as often because
Yeah.
they don't make us feel as good.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's even like the most natural, organic, straight from the field, straight from the animal type food. Some of it just doesn't settle well with us. Some people can't handle broccolis or those, I can't ever call what they actually are, the cruciferous or something. Um,
Yes.
some of us can't handle it, but we can handle tomatoes. Whereas on the flip side, the next person beside you despises tomatoes. And that's also if you're intuitive, that's because your body has a natural aversion to it for some reason, be it a slight allergy or something else, right?
Mhm. Yeah. And just listening to
Hmm.
that. Oh, that doesn't make me feel good when I eat that. So a funny story, my daughter was about 2 or 3 and she had, I think, an ear infection and they put her on antibiotics and she went crazy, like
Oh,
batshit crazy, off the walls, like her emotions were all over the place. And I said to her at one point, like, what is wrong with you? And she said, it's not me, mommy, it's the medicine.
oh, wow. For
Wow.
two?
Yeah. She was,
Oh,
and I went to the pharmacist and I said, this is what she said. And then it clicked. There's red dye in the strawberry or cherry, whatever antibiotic
yeah,
liquid. And he said, yeah, yeah, sometimes it affects kids. I was like, oh my
sometimes,
gosh, well, can you prescribe her something else?
right?
And they did. She was fine. But I think it was she can have like licorice or a sucker or something and it doesn't bother her. But I think it was the buildup because you take it for 14 days or something and it
Yeah,
was building a system, maybe. I don't know. But I was like, wow, she was
yeah.
crazy.
I can see that. I mean, in the school system alone, I have lots of friends who work within the school system, so I hear the stories. And you can see that like a lot of our behavioral issues come from definitely what the kids are eating, to the point where I have other school friend teachers who they see it in their classrooms. So within their own homes, they're like, on Sundays, we batch prep all of our snacks for the week. We make sure all of our meals are homemade meals. We're never eating out unless it's like the off chance here and there. And my kids don't touch any of the packaged foods because I see what it does to the other kids. And I don't need to be adding to that stressor within the school system. And I
So,
mean, way to take back that power within your own home. Um, I guess I don't know what the boundaries are as a teacher. I always say I would have been fired on the first day if I became a teacher just because I operate so differently. But in the same breath, I'm like, why aren't we teaching our kids these things or are sending home a letter to our parents being like, it would be really great to see these things in your lunches instead of these items. Um, but I don't know what the boundaries are within the institution for doing that either.
I don't either because my my kids always went to Montessori, so it was private, so they
Yeah.
could be a little bit more firm with what was coming in the lunch boxes. So it was always no candy, no chips, no pop. Um,
Mm,
but packaged goods were still a okay.
yeah.
Um, but again, I think that's just like the lack of knowledge that people see a bear paw and they think it's a cookie,
Yeah, I
and
would
it's
agree.
it's not a cookie. It's
No.
there's nothing natural in there at all. It's
Yeah.
just it's not really food. I think
No.
that's yeah, and people wonder why am I gaining weight or why is my child like this or and they don't even question that it could be what they're feeding. I love going
Mhm.
to the grocery store and as I'm walking around looking at what people put in their carts, right? And
Yeah.
just kind of gives you a cross section of what society values or what they're thinking or not thinking, as the
Yeah.
case.
What the commercial told them to do, right? All of those components. I mean, you mentioned the tobacco industry, and for how many years were we watching the Marlboro Man in his cowboy western duds riding in on a horse, looking all epic and amazing while smoking a Marlboro Slim, right? Like that's all marketing, and we are getting the exact same thing in kids' commercials, TV shows. How many TV shows since the early 2000s, late 90s had teens drinking coffee? Gilmore Girls is a prime example. Almost every single teenager within that show was drinking coffee. Yet I'm sure when you and I grew up, drinking coffee as a teenager was like an absolute no-go, and it was disgusting.
Mhm. And now, because of Starbucks, and it's like it's the trendy thing to come in with a
Yeah.
Starbucks drink, right? Or whatever. And even if there's no caffeine in them, the
Oh,
the juices
sugar.
and whatever, the fountain, like there's so much, there's just it's
Yeah.
so full of crap, It's just not food. I
It's
don't
it's like you're
frame
the
it, but
yeah, you're like the crappy food crusader, right? Like we're gonna get rid of the crappy food, one family, one item at a time, and try and just get people to shift their brains on, is this actually nourishing my body?
yes. And that's what they say. If it's not food, if it's not helping you heal or nourishing your body, it's not food,
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's okay that you're still having that, right? My husband loves his Coke, like Coca-Cola. um, he loves it, and it's his treat. I'm like, he's
Yeah.
an adult,
Yeah.
do what you will. He knows it's not good for him.
Yeah.
As long as you're conscious, because then from that space you can make the choices, right? But I think most people are functioning at a completely unconscious level. Here's an example. I was on Facebook this morning, and there was a local moms group, and the woman was talking about being early 40s and having problems with her menstrual cycle.
Hmm.
And every comment was, oh, I had that problem and you just need to go to your doctor. He'll probably put you on birth control. Or I got an IUD put in and it stopped my periods for 5 years and it was glorious. I never had to worry about camping trips or whatever. And I was like,
No.
again, kind of stunned, but like, I guess this is where we are as a society. But nobody went until I commented, and I haven't gone back to see if I got roasted yet. But that's not solving why that's happening to your body. Your body is giving you a sign that there's something going on, and maybe it's completely natural and has to do with perimenopause, but maybe it's not.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe seek out someone who specializes in women's hormone health,
Yeah.
or go see a naturopath, rather than just like, let's slap a band-aid on it and take birth control for the next 10 years to get
Yeah.
this regular.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Well,
the
and
same.
the education around birth control, like that type of estrogen going into your system, not even the progesterone, the estrogen that is going into your system outside of your natural production is what helps make menopause a fucking nightmare for women. Pardon my
Mhm.
language, but we've only grown up hearing women complain about menopause and how horrible it is and how awful and how how negative this incredibly natural process in the female cycle is. But that's because we didn't set ourselves up for going through it naturally, properly from a healthy standpoint. And that estrogen is not good. The birth control is setting you up for failure, basically. And why not, yeah, find the root cause, find the reason for it, understand what the long-term impacts are. Start asking what's going to happen 10 years from now.
That's
What's it
right.
going to do?
I often wonder too, and I don't know if there's any science. Well, I'm sure there's science, but I don't know the science behind, like, the more severe symptoms you have going through something like menopause and the general state of your health to
Yeah.
begin with.
Yeah.
I, I often wonder that too, because I'm 46 now, 47. And like, I don't, I'm in perimenopause for sure, but it's been a pretty easy go so
Yeah.
far. And I wonder, is this what it's going to be like, or is the shoe going to drop eventually, or is it
Hmm.
just going to be done? Like, I don't know. But I'm like, I wonder if that's just the state of where my baseline of health is versus
Maybe.
somebody else who's maybe overweight, or you're dealing with thyroid issues already, or
Yeah.
yeah. but all of these things where, and like that's where I see it a lot with kids. It's just you see all of these physical issues
Mm-hmm.
and nobody's really going like, what is causing that? Maybe
Yeah.
I need to feeding them or what's in the food or someone great that I recommend people listen to is Callie Means. Do you know him?
Okay. No.
He has been on like a number of podcasts. If you Google his name on Spotify, they'll pop up. But he used to be a lobbyist,
Oh.
and now he's kind of blowing the lid off of what's really going on in the food industry and how the meetings behind closed doors go, and um, it's really eye-opening because you think, well, how okay, so if the NIH is like the pinnacle of what we're going to follow,
Mhm.
um, then how, like, well, aren't there doctors that are going, okay, well, why are they recommending that kids up to the age of 2, it's okay for them to have 10% of their diet come from added sugar? This is what they're
Mhm.
recommending in the States. And it's like, how can they say that when we know in our hearts that that can't be true, like
Yeah.
that it's good for them? And they'll say to these doctors, well, this is what the NIH recommends, and you're not going to go against what they're saying, are you?
Yeah.
But meanwhile, there's been all of these backdoor deals behind closed doors that they've basically bought off the NIH to present these studies that have all been manipulated.
Yeah.
And so the average person goes, oh, they're recommending it, it must be just like we all thought 2 or 3 years ago, until we went, well, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
um it's not okay. It's
Yeah.
the, like we were saying earlier, just follow the money,
Yeah.
and you can start to see who's all connected. And just like the pharmaceutical companies made millions and millions and millions during COVID,
Mhm.
I believe the grocery stores are doing the same thing right now. They're like, Galen Weston was like record profits for the
Mhm.
Loblaws brand, in the last few years. And um, meanwhile, 73% of what's on the shelves there isn't real food.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, the challenge in the grocery industry is Loblaws specifically is they are dual purpose. So they're the franchise that you see and shop at, but they're also the distribution company. So they
mhm,
distribute the products. So a lot of the profit is not the grocery store, it's the distribution side that is making that profit. But then for sure there's just by way of the corporate greed, lobbyists, food scientists, the public demand for more ease, for more efficient cooking ideas, for better options. There's money going into that to being putting these things on the shelves. I mean, we used to be able to have small 2,000 square foot grocery stores and that serviced every single basic need that you had. And now we're looking at like what, 16, 20,000 square foot grocery stores
mhm,
because we have 30 different choices of the exact same sauce. Is
mhm.
that necessary?
And they're all owned by the same companies.
Yeah. And they're
So
all
really,
packaged by the same company. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Have you ever been in, like, my dad lives in Florida, so we've gone into Walmart
Oh,
in his and it is, I've never seen anything like it. I've never been in a Walmart in Canada that even compared to the size of the building. Like, we lost my stepmother in Walmart for a couple of
oh
hours, like, we
no.
couldn't find her. Um,
I could
but
see that happening though.
yeah, it's crazy how big it is. So,
Yeah.
um, oh yeah, it's getting back to, and I think until our lifestyles change, and this is where
Yeah.
it really hit home for me during COVID, because I was that frantic mother. I was working full time at the school. I was there from 8 to 4. My kids were at the school.
Hmm.
We'd go to work together. We'd come home together. I never really got a break from them. Then you come home and then you're right into activities and then bedtime, and then you do it all over again the next day. So I really think this is like a until well, the rug was pulled out from under me, then it was like, okay, we need to make a change. And that's when this all, kind of, we realized until we see the value in slowing down
Mm,
and not buying these things and having the time to prepare them ourselves, until other people see the value in slowing down,
yeah.
they'll just keep feeding the monster at the grocery store,
Yeah.
feeding big companies because it's easy.
100%. Yeah. And I mean, I love how necessity forces an adaptation or a reevaluation of how you move forward. And sometimes we have to be forced into that where it's like we need to make a change because our life is different, the way we function is different, our finances are different, the cost of food is different. So how do we mitigate that? Start growing our own garden, start making things at home. It is cheaper to make 2 dozen cookies at home than it is to buy a package of the concrete, dusty, disgusting chocolate chip cookies that feed for 30 pieces, right? But it's cheaper if you make it at home and think about it in that long run, big scale picture. So yeah, it's going to take 30, 45 minutes of your day. However, it's a really great opportunity to connect with your kids or your loved ones in a different capacity as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then it'll change things for their generation too, right?
Definitely. Definitely. And there's ways to be able to manage a really busy lifestyle, slow cookers, planning ahead, meal prepping, all those other things. So do you teach on that as well in your courses?
Yeah, I actually have a course right now. It's a first run that's going to start at the end of June. Um, and I can give you the link to it. And
Mhm.
I assume that I will run it probably like every month or every couple of months
Yeah.
going forward and sort of tweaking and adding to it.
Yeah.
But it'll be a 3-part Zoom series with uh, a group of probably women, parents. But it will start with the basics of like, okay, what you're telling me, like I shouldn't be buying this. So what's in it that's so bad, and what's it doing to us? And then how do I read a label to figure out what's in this stuff, or what are the parameters by what I should go buy when I buy something at the store, and where can I go to get fresh local things? How do I know what to look for in a farm, and things like that. And then going through actual recipes, menu planning, how to make things easy to do it at home. So yeah, so that's kicking off soon.
Perfect. That's good. And it's so funny because for you and I, it's probably like a normal, we do this all the time kind of thing. And we forget sometimes that it's not normal for other people. And so we have that knowledge base and that ability to be able to share that information. So I love that you're not holding it into yourself and you're sharing it with other people and helping them hopefully share it with their family or friends and other people in their life too.
Yeah, yeah. You hope so. And that's what they say. Usually the thing that you're the best at is the thing that you don't even think about because you just do it naturally.
Yeah, exactly.
Other
That's
people are like, second, wait, go back to the beginning. Even I sold somebody some pizza dough, some sourdough pizza dough, and I didn't even think to put like instructions because I was like, it's just pizza dough, like just stretch it out. But somebody messaged me and said, well, I don't cook this, what do I? And I was like, well, when you buy a ball of dough at the grocery store, it doesn't come with, um, doesn't usually come with instructions. So I walked her through it, but that was just my like, oh yeah, like not everybody just
yeah.
cooks from scratch pizza dough.
You can buy a ball of dough at the grocery store. I don't think I've ever seen that.
Yeah, it's usually in the section with like the cheese, like
Um,
not the processed cheese, but more like the
The,
brie.
the deli cheese.
Yeah, yeah, it's in
Okay.
the deli section usually, and it usually just comes in a plastic bag, like tied with a knot.
Yeah. I, I'm gonna have to keep my eyes open for that because I don't think I've ever seen that here in Alberta. But who knows? I've never been looking for dough either.
We also don't have milk in bags out there, right?
We don't anymore. We used to, not anymore. Now we have powdered milk in bags. That's about it. But I always joke because every so often you'll come across the special container for the bag milk. And it's like, oh, we could really use a bag of milk right now.
Yeah. Yeah, because you have the jugs, right?
Yeah, you have to have the jug because the jug, like it sets you up for success when you have the proper jug.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I hear
Yeah.
you. Um, yeah, I don't know what the ingredients are like in those store-bought ones, but I assume they're probably a little bit better than buying a frozen pizza.
Oh,
So,
I would agree with that. Again, really frozen food. It is a food scientist created this for the optimal outcome on your plate, not for the optimal outcome for your gut health, for your nutrition. It is
right.
designed to just cook to feel like it is as close to you just ordered it from the pizza place down the street. That's its only designation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We actually met a food scientist here in the last couple months, and it's just they operate in a totally different world. And they see it's interesting because I feel like most of them see nothing wrong with what they're doing. I mean,
Just gonna ask.
obviously, it paid for them. It paid for their living. So of course you're gonna support it. But um the way they look at food is entirely different than how I would view as a healthy perspective for food as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unique.
Yeah. It's it's just everybody's perspective is so different, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's like the women in this group chat this morning were,
Yeah.
well, just do this. And they don't see anything wrong with that because they've never looked at it from a different perspective.
Yeah. I think the other thing too is that most of our doctors, our general practitioners, are not trained in nutrition, and they are actually not trained in seeking root cause. They are trained and financially supported for doing the blanket fix. And we've known this for decades. It's not a surprise. It's not new. We've known it for decades. But it's the same as I had something that we thought was gallbladder issue, wasn't gallbladder. I'm highly active at the time. And I asked my doctor and I said, is it possible that it's because this muscle is attached up there and it's super tight? And she looked straight at me and she's like, I need to go back to my like anatomy chart. I don't know. And doctors giving nutrition advice is not a good space either because they are not nutritionists. And even our hospital dietitians are not teaching proper nutrition.
Yeah, I agree. I actually had a woman who said to me, if you go back to school and get your dietitian certificate, I will employ you.
Hmm.
Um, because it's so needed and everything. And I was like, you couldn't pay me to go back to be a dietitian.
No.
Like it's not where I'm hanging my hat.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fair. But I guess this is a call out for all of our young and up and coming employees of the world. Learn proper nutrition, get your dietitian certificate, and you probably have a really good job.
Yep.
But care about the outcome of the person, not the
Yeah.
paycheck attached to your role.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's no knock, like you said, it's no knock on doctors. It's just that they don't have the training because that's the way the
No.
system's been set up.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not a doctor for a reason. There's no way I could hold all of that information in my head and not harm somebody. Like there's a lot of weight on your shoulders as a doctor. So I have utmost respect for them, especially the ones who are really good at what they do. But back to the Facebook post, to just go to your doctor and expect that your doctor is going to know the solution is it's the really easy way out. And we need
Mhm.
to be able to start doing a little bit of research for ourselves because I'm pretty sure if you Googled, why is my period not normal? What's going on? These are the symptoms. You'll come up with some other root cause issues that you could go and start investigating.
Right. And then take those to your doctor and say, do you think
Exactly.
you can do these things?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful, Holly. I love what you're doing. And I so adore how you're just taking it back, making it easier for people, focusing on the kids or up and coming generations, and helping the parents learn in the process too. Um, as a former athlete, as a former personal trainer, it's definitely a gap in our world. And I adore how you have seen that gap and you're advocating for having better control on what you're putting into your body and understanding that it might be food, but it's lacking in a lot of nutrition. So let's start chasing after nutrition instead.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you.